holding my youngest daughter Emily in my arms. I was dozing off when my husband Benjamin suddenly raised his voice as he returned home. "Hey! Your husband came home from work and you're napping so carefree?" My second daughter Olivia jumped up in shock, while my eldest daughter Natalie stood beside her, glaring at their father. "I'm sorry." I tried to stand up, but I felt dizzy and stumbled. Benjamin sneered at me and took out an envelope. "I've been thinking of having you, a lazy wife like you, leave this house. Sign this and get out quickly." The content of the envelope he was grinning while holding out was a divorce paper. My face twisted in frustration. "At least, let me take the kids with me. I can't trust someone like you with the kids. Please, at least that." Clinging to his legs, I pleaded with him. Then he pushed Olivia towards me. "You can take this one and the baby. But you can't have Natalie," he said, grabbing Natalie from behind in a chokehold. "No! Let her go! She's quite useful to me. I'll take good care of her." I tried to pull Natalie away from Benjamin, but he pushed me away. "Hey, Natalie. If you don't obey me quietly, who knows what I'll do to your mom." He was threatening Natalie using me. How could he? "If you care about Natalie, you'll leave right away." With those words, he left the house. I hugged my crying children and started packing. "I'm sorry, Natalie. I promise, I'll come back for you." I hugged her tightly, spending our last night together. My name is Scarlett Brown. I live with my husband Benjamin, my mother-in-law, and our 3 daughters, a normal housewife who works part-time 3 or 4 days a week. I met Benjamin at work where I was a full-time employee when we got married. Though we were in different departments, everything went smoothly from dating to marriage. 3 months into our marriage, Benjamin made a proposal. "I'd really like to have 3 kids." He often showed his fondness for children, so I knew someday we might have our own. But I was worried about balancing work and parenting. "I've thought about it too, but we just got married, right? Plus, I'm handling a big project at work." Expressing my concerns only made me more anxious. Seeing my worried look, Benjamin reassured me, "Don't worry. They're my kids too. I won't let you handle all the parenting alone." I felt so grateful to have married such a kind man and began to cherish the thought of raising his children. A year later, when our first daughter Natalie was born, Benjamin, true to his word, took the lead in caring for her. I was on parental leave and tried my best not to overburden him. However, when Natalie was 3 months old, Benjamin's business trips began to increase. "There's not much I can do about this." Sure, it's work, I understood that. But before I could even bring it up, Benjamin seemed uneasy. I was only grateful to him and couldn't understand why he was avoiding eye contact. "It's okay. I won't complain. Just help out when you can, within your limits." Hearing this, Benjamin smiled with relief. "Of course, I'll do that," he said, bowing his head jokingly. Parenting can be tough, but if we can keep laughing together like this, I know we can get through it. I was feeling grateful for these happy moments. "I'll watch Natalie today. Why don't you go out and relax a bit?" One day, my mother-in-law, with whom we lived, suggested this, so I decided to go out for a meal with a colleague. Benjamin was away on a business trip and wouldn't be home that day. I planned to buy some pastries as a thank you for my mother-in-law and have tea with her tomorrow. With that idea, I bought some pastries at a bakery and headed to meet my colleague. Lost in the familiar streets, I thought I saw Benjamin, but he quickly disappeared into the crowd. He said he was on a business trip, maybe I was mistaken. Without dwelling on it, I hurried to the meeting place. Catching up with my colleague after a long time, I got home just before the date changed. My mother-in-law had already put Natalie to bed and was taking a break. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry. I got back late." I apologized, bowing my head. She smiled back kindly at me. She's a woman of few words, but she didn't seem angry or annoyed. I shrugged apologetically, and my mother-in-law said with a laugh, "Feel free to tell me anytime. I've never taken care of a girl before, so it's fun for me." The next day, I gave my mother-in-law the thank you pastries, and as we were having tea together, she asked me a question I'd never heard before. "What kind of person is Benjamin to you, Scarlett?" I was surprised she would ask about her own son, but I honestly shared my feelings. I told her he was kind, understanding of my emotions. We do have our fights occasionally, but he always apologizes sincerely. She just nodded as she listened, then casually remarked, "To me, he's always been incredibly selfish, arrogant, and can get quite emotional." I had never known that side of him. Noticing my surprise, she said, "Benjamin changed after meeting you, Scarlett. He's become kinder to me too," she said with a warm smile, thanking me for changing Benjamin and asking for my continued support. Her hand was warm as she held mine, but there was a firm strength in her grip. When Natalie turned 1, I went back to work on a part-time basis. I had thought Benjamin would start helping out more with housework and childcare once I resumed work, but that wasn't the case. Natalie was an easy child, so I didn't feel too burdened and didn't press him for help, but my reliance on my mother-in-law increased, which worried me. When I talked to Benjamin about it, he replied indifferently, "Mom's always at home, she doesn't mind doing that much." This must be the arrogance my mother-in-law was talking about. I couldn't keep relying on her so much, so when Natalie turned 2 and started daycare, I was relieved. Returning to a regular work schedule, my days became a whirlwind. I wanted to ask Benjamin to at least help with daycare drop-offs and pickups, but he was often too busy with early meetings or client dinners, so I decided to handle it myself. Whenever Natalie got suddenly sick, I was the one who had to take leave. Feeling increasingly cornered by the constant thoughts of "why is it always me?" and yearning for just a little bit of understanding, I tried to talk to Benjamin one night while lying in bed. "Hey, Benjamin." But without even looking at me, he sighed and said coldly, "I have an early start tomorrow. Give me a break. What if Natalie wakes up?" I was shocked. Day after day, I was caught up in work, household chores, and childcare, with no one to help me. Silently, I let the tears flow, careful not to let Benjamin notice. Soon, I could hear his snoring beside me. The next day, noticing my lack of energy, my mother-in-law said, "Scarlett, I'm feeling pretty good today, so I'll pick up Natalie. I'll also prepare dinner." Natalie was clearly happy, but there was no reaction from Benjamin, who had seen the exchange. I felt my feelings for him cooling. Benjamin had stopped helping around the house, but at night, he would seek my company. Honestly, I was too exhausted from work and childcare to even think about it. I had refused once, but he got so upset that I reluctantly agreed afterward. When I found out I was pregnant with our second child, I was also up for a promotion. I knew Benjamin wouldn't help with childcare or housework. Between children and work, I knew I had to choose the children. I understood that, but lying on the couch, carelessly watching TV and laughing, not showing any concern for me during my pregnancy, I felt hatred towards Benjamin for the first time. Even after the birth of our second daughter, Olivia, he seemed completely uninterested. He would take Natalie to the park, but he wouldn't even change Olivia's diapers. Over these 5 years, I hadn't realized how gradually Benjamin had changed, becoming too familiar in our daily life. And I hadn't realized how much my own feelings for him had cooled. Since Olivia's birth, Benjamin stopped coming home even on weekends. Was his department that busy, or was it because he had somewhat advanced in his career? I had no way of knowing. Deciding that working full-time was impossible, I had resigned from my job. When I went to my workplace for the last time to complete the resignation process, I saw that a colleague had become the section manager. That should have been my desk. I felt a wave of envy clinging to me. Even though we're still friends, I felt disgusted with myself for harboring such feelings. Being quick to adapt was supposed to be my strong suit. After finishing the paperwork, I hurried back home to my beloved children, feeling like I was shaking something off. Concerned that Benjamin's earnings alone were not enough, I consulted with my mother-in-law and decided to take a part-time job as a cashier at a nearby supermarket. I would work about 5 hours, 3 or 4 days a week. And around that time, Benjamin's attitude began to change again. While I was preparing dinner, Benjamin came home and suddenly yelled out loud, "I come home tired from work and this is the meal you prepare?" I was baffled by his sudden anger. Natalie was frightened, and Olivia started crying from the loudness of his voice. "Ah, enough. Quiet her down already. What in the world are you yelling about at this time?" My mother-in-law's gentle tone, as she came to see what the fuss was about, seemed to slightly ease the situation. But Benjamin responded with a disrespectful tone. "Mom, just keep quiet. I'm disciplining her because she can't do anything right." His manner of speaking had changed as if he was a different person. My mother-in-law couldn't say anything more, just bowed her head apologetically to me and returned to her room. Wondering what the problem was, I checked the dinner dishes on the table. The only difference from usual was that there were some ready-made side dishes. "Is it about these supermarket side dishes? I got them for myself to eat. Don't make excuses." He interrupted me mid-sentence with a shout. His fierceness was so intimidating that Natalie almost started crying again. This was getting nowhere. I decided to just endure it. After his tirade, he said as if spitting out the words, "I'm going to eat out tonight. And I'll go straight to work tomorrow," and then he left the house. It felt like the calm after a storm. Who was that just now? My husband used to be kinder, not someone who yells. In my days, I remembered what my mother-in-law had said that day. Selfish, arrogant, and emotional. Was she timing it, or did she just know? She came over and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry." Her faint voice echoed emptily. All I could do was hug my two daughters. From that day, whenever Benjamin did come home, he would complain about the housework or the kids' upbringing. Yet, when in a good mood, he sought my company. The love I once had for him was gone, and it was painful, but I couldn't resist, considering our children's life. I endured this hell for 7 long years. Then I found out I was pregnant with our 3rd child. The child inside me was innocent. Olivia seemed happy about getting a new sister or brother, but Natalie, entering her teenage years, must have felt complicated. They both started to help more with the housework, concerned about my health, strengthening our bond. No matter how much I was oppressed by my husband, just having my children made me feel happy. That alone gives my life meaning. When the baby in my belly is born, I'll leave this house. I wasn't going to sacrifice any more of my life. I had confided in my eldest daughter, Natalie, and it seemed she had made up her mind as well. Meanwhile, my health was deteriorating. I had to be hospitalized for preterm labor, but who would take care of the housework? That was all I could worry about. My daughters, though becoming more independent, were still only capable of helping with chores to a certain extent. My mother-in-law, having weakened since injuring her back a few years ago, wasn't much help either. With no other option, I lowered my pride and asked Benjamin to hire a helper. It wasn't for him, but for the children. Perhaps realizing he had no other choice, he agreed to hire a helper. Being away from him for a while during my hospital stay lessened my stress, and my youngest daughter, Emily, was born safely. However, my health didn't improve much even after being discharged. At this rate, leaving with 3 children seemed impossible. I could barely move and only managed housework intermittently. Then, one day, an opportunity came. It was when I had finished preparing dinner and was waiting for Benjamin's return. Holding my youngest, Emily, I dozed off, only to be awakened by Benjamin's arrival. He suddenly raised his voice. "Hey! The husband comes home from work, and the wife is napping so carefree?" Olivia, who was watching TV in the living room, jumped up in shock, and Natalie glared at her father while comforting her sister. "Oh, I'm sorry." As I tried to stand up, I felt dizzy and staggered. Benjamin sneered at me and pulled out an envelope from his bag. "I think it's time for a lazy wife like you to leave this house." He showed me the envelope, smirking. When did he start making such a disgusting face? "Just sign this and get out." The contents of the envelope were divorce papers. Finally, the day had come. With the joy, uncertainty also crept in. With my condition, I couldn't support the children yet. Seeing my frustrated face, Benjamin laughed even more disgustingly. Agreeing easily might lead him to retract his offer. I deliberately raised my voice. At least, let me take the children with me. I had thought he would consider the children a burden, but his response blew away my thoughts. I can't trust someone like you with the kids. He was smirking again. He must enjoy seeing me in pain. With that in mind, I raised my voice theatrically. Please, at least that. Let me take the children with me. I clung to his legs, pleading. Then, shaking me off, he pulled Olivia's hand and pushed her towards me. You can take her and the baby. They're not attached to me anyway. I hugged Olivia close and looked at Natalie. What about Natalie? Natalie is off limits, he said, grabbing her from behind. No! Let her go! Natalie struggled to escape, but she couldn't match his strength. She's quite useful. I'll take good care of her. Handing Emily to Olivia, I tried to take Natalie from Benjamin. My body was weak, and I couldn't muster much strength. Still, I confronted Benjamin with all the force I could. This man. It seemed like he would give in to my determination, but I was no match for his strength. Stop being so persistent. I'll pay child support for them, so just behave. With those words, he pushed me away. Mom! As Natalie tried to run to me, Benjamin caught her and uttered something terrible. Hey, Natalie. If you don't obey me, who knows what I'll do to your mom? He was threatening Natalie using me as leverage. How could he? If you care about Natalie, you'll leave right now. Leaving those words behind, he left the house. I hugged my crying children and started packing. Mom! Natalie looked at me with a sad expression. I'm sorry, Natalie. I promise I'll come for you. I hugged Natalie tightly and spent our last night together. The next morning, having heard everything, my mother-in-law handed me an envelope saying, "It's not much but." It was quite thick, and realizing what it contained, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Mother-in-law, please take care of Natalie, please. She nodded silently, and I bowed my head, then left with Olivia and Emily. After walking for a while, I heard a voice calling from behind. Mom! Turning around, Natalie was running outside barefoot. I ran to Natalie and said it once more. It was also a reaffirmation of my own resolve. I will definitely come for you. Natalie said nothing more. I took my 2 daughters back to my parents' home and explained everything to them. They didn't blame me for coming back, they accepted me, saying I had done well. My parents doted on the 2 girls, and Olivia seemed to quickly adapt to the new environment. Leaving Emily with them, I started looking for a job. I needed to rescue Natalie from that man's clutches as soon as possible. My parents understood this. I managed to find a job and filed a lawsuit to regain custody of Natalie, but it was difficult to obtain. If only Benjamin had something incriminating against him, but Natalie was excelling in school and there were no financial struggles, so the court saw no issue. I tried visiting Natalie several times, but the timing was never right or Benjamin would find out, foiling my attempts. I could only talk to her over the phone, arranged by my mother-in-law, and 3 years passed like this. One day, I received a call from Benjamin. My mother-in-law Audrey had passed away, and the funeral was over. Just a few weeks ago, I had talked to her on the phone. Detecting my sorrow, Benjamin's tone softened. Mom's gone, and now it's just me and Natalie at home. I find myself missing the times when you all were here. I was stunned, speechless at the man who had yelled at and oppressed me now speaking like this. I've finally understood the importance of family. Why don't you all come back home? I decided to play along with his words. Yes. I'd like to pay respects to my mother-in-law and see Natalie too. Benjamin sounded pleased on the other end of the phone. Unaware of mine and Natalie's plan. When Natalie and I reunited, she was already 18 years old. while Olivia, now in middle school, was excited yet nervous to meet her sister after 3 years. Is she my new big sister? Emily seemed to not even remember Natalie's existence. As we hugged during our long-awaited reunion, Benjamin watched us, nodding, his eyes welling up as he said, "A family really should be together." Stepping into the familiar house, I paid my respects at my mother-in-law's photo. I still had the envelope she gave me that day and used, hoping to someday use it for myself, but that was no longer possible. Sighing softly, I heard Benjamin's voice from behind. "Mom was kind until the end," he said, sitting beside me. "I was out of my mind back then." Awkwardly, he continued talking while glancing at the daughters chatting in the living room. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wish we could spend the rest of our lives together as a family." Those words were the same as the unforgettable proposal I heard 20 years ago. "Please spend the rest of your life with me as a family." Back then, those words made me happy, but now, they brought no joy. The man sitting beside me, now out of shape and fidgeting, waiting for my response, was he really the man I once loved? I had my doubts. Natalie sent Olivia and Emily outside to play and came over to us. I braced myself to speak to Benjamin. "I have no intention of living here with you." My blunt words surprised him. Natalie added, like the final blow, "Today, we're asking you to leave, Dad." "What?" His bewildered voice was ignored as Natalie calmly continued. The house had been inherited by Natalie after my mother-in-law passed away. The will was with a lawyer. "I am the owner of this house," she said, her voice void of emotion. She recounted how Benjamin tried to dump the housework on her after forcefully separating us. And how my mother-in-law, who couldn't stand it anymore, took over. "Grandma had to put up with your arrogance, and honestly, it was so annoying." Natalie's words flowed endlessly. Benjamin had pushed all his troubles onto Natalie and my mother-in-law while claiming to be busy with work, but in reality, he was womanizing. "You brought different women home every few months." The look in Natalie's eyes as she spoke to Benjamin was like looking at filth. While Benjamin was away, Natalie seemed to have been devising a plan with my mother-in-law. All this was done under the premise that she would live with me again. Of course, through communication with my mother-in-law and phone calls with Natalie, I was aware of the plan. After Natalie vented all her pent-up frustrations, she took a deep breath and said, "So, please pack your things and leave right away." Benjamin remained frozen, unable to move. He probably never expected his own daughter to say such things to him. His unresolved negative emotions were directed at me. "You knew about this." He glared at me. But I was no longer the person I used to be. "Yes, I knew. I knew about your infidelity even before our divorce." I could see his face turning pale. Actually, when I resigned, I had a chance to talk with a colleague who revealed that Benjamin had been lying about work and business trips to spend time with other women. My colleague from the same workplace had doubts about my words regarding his busy schedule and told me the truth. Later, she occasionally sent me photos of Benjamin's affairs. "Friends are important, aren't they?" She had become his boss by then. "Do you know where I work now?" By then, Benjamin had slumped his shoulders, unable to even look at us. "What should one have? Friends?" I was working at a law firm, doing odd jobs, thanks to a referral from that colleague. "Now, never show your face to us again." A few days later, when Benjamin's belongings were all removed, Olivia, Emily, and I returned to the house. "Is this Emily's new home now?" Emily's innocent smile was so bright. Since then, Benjamin has been living alone in an apartment. My friend, now his female boss, exposed all his adulterous acts, and there were even women who wanted to sue him. "I've always suspected something fishy since you got married," she said with a laugh. She was the person I dined with when my mother-in-law created some free time for me. Apparently, she had been tracking Benjamin's movements since the time I mentioned I might have seen him in a crowd. "I was wondering when you would finally ask for alimony." I'm truly grateful. It had been a while since I last saw her, but she was always the same. Watching Emily play in the cafe's kids area, she squinted her eyes fondly. You rejected a promotion to protect those kids, didn't you? Olivia and Natalie approached the playing Emily. Don't ever let go of your happiness again, she said before leaving the cafe. Natalie is starting college this spring, studying in the law department of a national university, possibly becoming a lawyer. Even though I work and receive alimony from Benjamin, our household still requires a lot of money. As if to fill the gap of the past years, I prepared lunchboxes for Natalie. It's embarrassing to have lunchboxes at college, she'd say, but she ate them every day. Olivia had started a new middle school but seemed happy to reunite with her elementary school friends. Emily, now a senior in kindergarten, started mimicking Natalie and Olivia's way of talking, becoming a bit cheeky. Each of the three girls was growing up bright and lively. The girls, who were once my responsibility, will eventually leave my side. But I'm sure my happiness will continue beyond that. I hope their smiles will be there too. Praying for this, I paid my respects to my mother-in-law and left for work.